My name is Ern Rubiks. I'm from Hungary.
Hungary. Now, I understand that you are a professor, and where do you teach, and what do you teach?
Actually, I'm retired now, so because of my age, and but I'm professor of architecture and design at the Academy of Applied Arts in the past, but now it's changed their name and it's called Lloyd University.
Okay. Now, when you say architecture and design, I'm confused because we have schools of design here in the United States, and we have schools of architecture, and they seem to be disjoint. So are you in one or the other, or are you in a true sense doing both?
I believe those two things is only one.
I see.
And many of architects and designers agree on this, because it's a question of scale and it's not a question of the task. Naturally, you need to have some different kind of knowledges in details, but the spirit of it, design in general, it's a very same task, because the main meaning of it in this sense is to modify environment according to the human needs.
Famously, I guess Frank Lloyd Wright designed furniture for his houses. Is this the interaction that you're talking about, or something different?
You know, it's Marcel Breuer, Hungarian origin, is known more about his furniture than his buildings, but he was an architect, and so that's what I said. It's the attitude must be very similar. Nature, the task, and how it works, it's practically very different.
Very good. Now, the reason you're at this conference, of course, is amongst the many things you've done, you invented a puzzle that everybody knows and associates with you. This was done in the mid-70s, or do I have my date wrong?
No, it's I made my discoveries in '74.
Yes.
And I made my patent application in '75, so you're right.
Were you a student still at this time, or not?
Unfortunately, no. I was already a lecturer, lecturing design in my school.
Now, some of us imagine that you created this in response to an assignment or a challenge. Other people think that you just created it as a plaything. What is the truth behind that?
I created this following to my curiosity and the potential of 3-dimension and structure. I had interest about system approach and that kind of thing. So all together led me to the final thing. At first, for me, it was interested about the structure, the engineering part, but later on, I had the feeling very soon, especially when I was able to create my workable prototypes. I had the feeling there is a puzzle content as well, or there is a challenge. Yes. You know, puzzle is a very what kind of term, so it's much more.
Now, you could do a Rubik's Cube by just 27 cubes and pick it up and rotate them. So when did you realize that you could build an internal mechanism so that it could be a real rotation and not just 27 cubes?
That was in '74. So that's, how can I say, I had an aim and a target. From my childhood, I had experience about many problem solving and mechanical puzzle type of things, but I was all the time like to have something what is one unit and not you have several pieces and you lost one and it became meaningless because you can't finish what you are doing. So I wanted something what is one piece. That's one thing. Other thing is I never liked that type of problems when you are working with several hundreds of elements and so on and so forth. But for me, it can be very boring because I think the physical task is more than the intellectual one. So I was looking something that is very simple, very containing very small elements, number of elements, and easy to handle, and and in the same time it has several possibilities.
Now there's
Combinations and so forth.
the history of mechanical puzzles is certainly 150 years old, and there are many things that could have inspired you. For example, sliding block puzzles have the nature of this in some abstract sense. Yeah. Was there anything like sliding block puzzles that you can harken back to?
You know, sliding block puzzles are two-dimensional.
Yes.
So I was interested about three-dimension much more. In that case, for example, the Soma cube is much more closed because it's three-dimensional, and the problem is three-dimensional. And it looks like the cube if it's folded,
yes, yes.
in my cube, because it's 3 by 3. Big cube you are able to put together. But I like very much the pentominoes. The pentominoes have two-dimensional form, but you can create three-dimensional ones, and it makes it much more interesting and rich of challenge.
But so 3-dimension is the only criteria that you thought was the most important, right?
I think.
Okay.
I thought that, and I think.
But since then, you have had many other puzzles published under your name. Not all are three-dimensional. Some are.
Most of them three-dimensional, you know, and all of my favorites are.
All your favorites are, okay.
Three-dimensional. So, for example, the magic is the folding, my folding puzzle.
Yes.
It's three-dimensional, and it's the surprising effect how you can create from two-dimension, three-dimensional object without
yes.
taking apart and creating and folding.
Now the magic was, of course, in some abstract sense related to flexagons, but the action was completely different.
Sure.
And
the structure.
So to create, let's just talk about magic because people know more about the cube. For the magic, how did you invent that? There is the notion of what you want to accomplish, but then there's also the ability to make it, physical constraints that will have the right feel. Was that a inspiration or was that hard work?
You know, again, partly you can say nothing new under the sun. So
Okay.
all the time you can find something that is previously remind you and you can say inspire you. You know, hinges are a very common
Yes.
term. In a practical sense, if we like to go into a room, our doors are capable to move because of the hinges, if it's not a sliding door. But there is interesting objects as well, like the magical wallet, you know, when you turn it and disappeared and so on, that the kind of thing. But all of them are, what I did is nothing else, just make some kind of twist on these hinges. So, and in that case, not can be able to move only one edges, but they can change. The hinges are moving. That's the solution of magic.
Right. Now, some of these puzzles, like the Soma cube was associated with Piet Hein, and the flexagons associated with Richard Guy and some other people. Have you had interactions, because we think of you as being isolated in Hungary. Perhaps you're much more in touch with all of these people than we realize.
How can I say? I've been isolated in several ways, and partly I am because I'm that type of person who would like to work alone, and I'm really close my my surrounding when I'm thinking about something. But after I achieve something, I'm very happy to share. That the other reason was in that time there was a little bit different world. So we had the Iron Curtain, and I was behind that, and I was growing up in that circumstances. But you know, literature and books and many other things reached me, so I had some knowledge about more than what's happening in Hungary.
The cube, when it came out in the West, I should ask, was there a time lag between its release behind the Iron Curtain and the West, or did they occur more or less at the same time?
You know, usually inventors or creative people make the mistake, they are impatient. Mm-hmm. You must be patient if you'd like to achieve something. So when I made got my idea, and I made my solution for the idea, and I was waiting 3 years to see it in shops. And after that 3 years, but because that was only in the Hungarian shops behind the Iron Curtain, mm-hmm. I waited another 3 years when we were able to go out and to reach the Western world.
Now you must know that amongst mathematicians, especially combinatorial mathematicians, the Hungarian background is legendary. There's, in fact, what's called the Hungarian School of Mathematics. And they seem to think at a different plane than the rest of us. They are extraordinary. In that period of time when it was available in Hungary, but before it was available in the West, did it attract interest by Hungarian mathematicians?
Sure. I think that was the first potential to go out from Hungary, but with the object they are going to the abroad to meet with their colleagues and exchange ideas, and in the meantime they will carry some cubes and show that how interesting is it.
Oh, so this is a new story. You're saying that the Hungarian mathematicians introduced it to the West before it was marketed.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, very nice.
They discovered in the shops, you know, that it was valuable.
So someone like David Singmaster might have seen it first from a Hungarian mathematician rather than from a shop.
It's possible, yeah, you can ask him.
I'll ask him. I will.
Yeah.
Yes, I did not know that happened. That was fascinating. But even so, we don't have, at least in the West, we don't have any books about the cube written by Hungarians. They're all written by people in the West. Are there books written by Hungarians that we're not aware of?
In the 80s, I was editing a book in Hungarian, and it was published in Hungarian. And later on, it was its translation published in English by Oxford Press. So it was available. That was a book I tried to collect people who had different view about the world, and because of that different view about the cube. So one of the co-authors was a physician, another one was a mathematician, another one was a theatric, something like that,
yes.
how do you call it in English. So think about mental, our mental view, that problem solving, and what does it mean for kids, and why it's different for adults, and that kind of different kind of views. And naturally I was written one part of it.
Well, I've spoken to a woman who, just by virtue of doing your cube, apparently has more or less reversed the symptoms of arthritis. Just from doing this alone, her doctor is surprised.
Yes, I heard many interesting things, some kind of effects or side effects of the cube. It's discovered it's very good, for example, for autism. And right now, in last year, when we had the World Championship, the winner of the World Championship was a very autistic guy, and and he was very happy to do that. So that makes them, you know, their problem is with contact with the environment, the people, and so on. And these kind of activities, and they became part of a community. It helps them to find a different way of living.
Now, I suspect, though, people go too far. They might say, I have a theory that solving the cube is like living life, or solving the cube is like, you know, you must hear a lot of extrapolations on this in many different directions, some of which might be too much, I don't know.
Sometimes, yeah. You know, it's, for me, the most, I can't say surprising, but most emotionally interesting thing is how the cube as a solution of something, or a potential, what is show potentials, was able to inspire people on many areas and many fields. So inspire people creating experimental music, inspire people to make very strange records, and inspire to find something else and how to improve. And nature, in the same time, the principle of the cube, how it was constructed, inspired people to modify it. So the modifications of the cube and the extraction, I preferred between the platonic solids, the cube as it is, but you can use that principle, and you can see the examples, and they are available, the triangles, octahedron, and tetrahedron, and many all of them, yes. Or you can, and more. So you can use gears, you can use many other things. Naturally, the main idea is the same, but the appearance and how it works and how you handle it's very difficult. Naturally, I was looking, and I started with 2x2 and 3x3, and I was not keen to go further, because I felt if I go further, I didn't get much more in experience, but it's much more complicated, and prices go higher and so on. But in practice, we find people are interested about the 4x4, 5x5, and right now you can have the 7x7 and so on, or making records, you can have 14 or something like that, yes. Times 14.
Well. Did I hear you right that you said you actually started with the 2x2?
Sure.
So you actually built a 2x2
yeah,
in '74?
Usually if I have an idea, I'm looking for the simplest,
yes.
Because I believe from the simplest you can go further and step to make the second step.
But the internal mechanism for the 2x2 is very different from the 3x3.
No, it's precisely the same, because the 2x2, the solution for the 2x2 was the 3x3. So,
really?
Yeah.
I'll have to
naturally modifying something, but it's the understanding how it works, okay. Precisely the same.
Does it, well, first off, I don't have to tell you that it was such a fad that everybody walking down the street had one in their hands at one point in time.
Yeah, that's what it's called, craze.
But does it bother you that most of those people never solved it?
How can I say? I know, for me it was very difficult to find a practical solution, and to believe myself, and later on to believe other people's, it's solvable, and you can do it, and you can play with it, and there must be a result. And because of the collected knowledges about it, it's became more and more easy to learn. Mm-hmm. But to learn something is very different than to discover something, how to find independently a solution. In my view, and that's my base of my relationship for teaching, I believe the best thing if you only help to discover, not to say that's the truth. Yes. So and say facts, and they memorize it. So that's not the way to do that. So I think we need to help the younger generation how to to find out their solutions, which are many times, if it's only one, that will be the same, but it's a very different route. It leads to that result.
Has the people proposed, though, a sequence of puzzles, like a 2x2 perhaps, but a sequence of puzzles that you can always feel more success with until you get to, let's say, the 3x3? So, because some people aren't mathematically minded. They can't teach themselves algorithms. They can't discover these themselves. They need to be helped. Has anybody approached you with sort of a sequence of puzzles to learn the skills?
I really didn't think about this theoretically, so I believe on practice. I believe on learning by doing type of thing. So in the meantime to discover and naturally try to understand what's happened. So that's a very practical approach, but for me it's good enough.
It worked out, okay. I guess I have to ask, again, for the Hungarian mathematicians, did you know people like Bolabash, Erdős, and people like this, or they were in a different world than you?
Partly different world. It's not my profession, math. I admire, and I had no problem with math in my school. So, especially because I was in grammar school, I studied arts, so you can imagine how, in general, artists are the relationship with math and with the school itself, except their main task, create something and so on. So I was probably the best in my class, but I all the time had the feeling math is very interesting, and I enjoyed every part of it, but for me, I need to have a real contact with the real world, and touching it, modifying it, working with material and that kind of thing. So in that case, I can say I'm a craftsman.
A craftsman?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Did you craft other puzzles before the cube?
Sure.
Things that have been lost to history?
I did a lot of things, so that naturally I didn't call them puzzles, but three-dimensional objects and things which are capable to do something. For example, the snake, probably you heard about, it's before the cube.
Was? Okay.
It was before the cube, but it was not created to become a puzzle. In my belief, it's not a puzzle, but that you can formulate questions related with it, but the task with the snake is creation, shapes and forms, and discover the potential of the structure, nothing else. And they enjoy it.
So some people would call that a toy, something that you can play with.
Something like that, sure. But the cube is a toy you can play with.
Play.
Play. Play is a very important element of our task, and I think it's a very tragical thing if we forget to play.
Well, I think I heard you talk about play before, so let me just ask you, do you have any sort of philosophical thoughts about the importance of play?
Play is, how can I say, it's the word itself, the whole word, it's full of contradictions, we know that. And there are rules, but sometimes it's very difficult to understand the rules. The play is some kind of dream world when we know the rules are working, and everybody keeps the rules. That in the real world it's not typical. so that's why it's a wonderful world, and in that case, usually if you are playing, you are successful or not, it depends on you.
Well, I've heard that play is important for children so that they can learn to live in a world with rules. But is it as important for adults?
I think we need to keep the same relationship with playing when we were a child. In the meantime, we were not to forget how does it feel, and how if you would like to relax, play is the best thing to give you the best relaxation.
I would say a lot of people don't think the cube is relaxing.
I'm sure a lot of people knows it's relaxing. Playing with the cube is very close to meditation. You lost your contact with the outer world because you are what is very typical. If you are concentrating on something, you lost all the other things. And because the difficulties or your task, how hard is your task, that's a need to to concentrate on it, and without that, just to recognize what's happening, what you are doing, and remembering, and many other things. So not to forget the way we are. So it's like it's walking around in a very huge labyrinth. You know. That's,
yes. You've used the labyrinth metaphor before.
Yeah.
But some people view a labyrinth as a puzzle to be solved. Some people in the old days in medieval churches thought a labyrinth was something you would cross to meditate. And other people think a labyrinth is a trap.
Yeah.
So which sense of labyrinth are you using?
Problems, which are well-formulated problems, in general, it's very similar to labyrinths. If you are not able to solve the problem, that means you are trapped. Yes. and labyrinth is very interesting. The analog for the labyrinth. Labyrinth is easy to find a labyrinth. I'm speaking in a classical sense of yes. Labyrinth. If you fly and have a look above,
yes.
you can see. What does it mean? To find your way in the labyrinth, you need to understand the labyrinth.
Yes.
How it's constructed and what's the route, nature of the route. So that's why it's very similar to...
Solving labyrinth is a combination of learning
yeah.
and solving.
Sure.
Yes, indeed yeah. It is. Well, that's probably a good place for us to stop then. Yeah. And I thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot. Great. Thank you.